In 1990, when he was 19 years and 28 days old, Pete Sampras became the youngest US Open men's singles champion in history. He defeated his career rival Andre Agassi in the final 6-4, 6-3, 6-2. 12 years later, in 2002, Pete Sampras ended his record breaking career at the US Open again, winning his fifth singles title and Open era record at his home major and fourth overall against Andre Agassi with a score 6-3, 6-4, 5-7, 6-4. In between those 12 years, Pete Sampras carved out a place in tennis history with a then record 14 major singles titles, and without a shadow of a doubt placed his name among the best ever to wield a tennis racket. Pete Sampras was not an overnight success. It took 2 arduous years, taking his lumps on the professional tour, to round into a big serving, big match player. But when he retired, a 14-time major champion, 7 Wimbledon titles, 5 US Open championships, and 2 Australian Open victories, he was regarded worldwide as the consummate tennis champion who won 14 out of 18 major singles finals. Pete Sampras compiled a 762 wins and 222 defeat career singles record, putting him in the all-time best of the Open era. He captured 64 tour singles titles in 265 overall tournaments. In a 5-year span of tour domination from 1993 through 1998, Pete Sampras held a stranglehold on the ATP year-end rankings, finishing the year as the world's number 1 player 6 consecutive years. In comparison to his flamboyant and flashy nemesis Andre Agassi, who Sampras faced 34 times in his career and defeated 20 times, Sampras was all business on court. He consistently told the media when asked why he wasn't more colorful on court, "I let my racket do the talking. That's what I'm all about, really. I just go out and win tennis matches. I never wanted to be the great guy or the colorful guy or the interesting guy. I wanted to be the guy who won matches." Until Pete Sampras won his 13th major title, Australian Roy Emerson held since 1967 the record for men's singles major wins with 12. I have talked about Roy Emerson in a video on this channel. When Pete Sampras defeated Agassi to win the 2002 US Open, Pete Sampras became the 5th oldest champion at that time in history at 31 years, 27 days, and the oldest since his idol Rod Laver in 1969. Rod Laver had won at the age of 31 years and 1 month. Pete Sampras was born in the Potomac in Maryland State. He groomed his game in Rancho Palos Verdes, California at the Jack Kramer Tennis Club. I have talked about Jack Kramer in a video on this channel. In a 5-year span starting in 1985, he went from 5'5" to 6 foot tall and refined his game immensely, abandoning his two-handed backhand for a one-hander and ditching his wooden racket for the new graphite technology. He turned professional at the age of 16 in 1988, launching his career as the number 893 ranked player in the world. He broke into the top 100 by the end of that year, but his first 3 years playing in major events did not produce the kind of results that would indicate future greatness. In fact, his career did not flourish until 1993, 3 years after he won the 1990 US Open. But his 1990 championship provided a glimpse of greatness, more for who he defeated to win the championship than how he became the youngest male champion in 100 years. Prior to the US Open, Pete Sampras was ranked at a then career high number 12 in the world by the ATP. We are talking about the 1990 US Open. In the 4th round, he took out hard-driving Austrian Thomas Muster, the number 6 seed, winning 6-7, 7-6, 6-4, 6-3. In the quarterfinals, he played a phenomenal match in upsetting number 3 seed Ivan Lendl in an epic 5-setter, 6-4, 7-6, 3-6, 4-6, 6-2, and ending Ivan Lendl's run of 8 straight US Open finals. I have talked about Ivan Lendl in a video on this channel. Pete Sampras faced unseeded John McEnroe in the semifinals, but he was still John McEnroe playing on his favorite stage, and Sampras needed to raise his game to earn a 6-2, 6-4, 3-6, 6-3 victory. I have talked about John McEnroe in a video on this channel. He was peaking at just the right time, but no one could predict the 19-year-old would dismantle number 4th seed Andre Agassi so easily in the final, winning 6-4, 6-3, 6-2. I have talked about Andre Agassi in a video on this channel. Pete Sampras had become the first American male to win at Flushing Meadows since John McEnroe in 1984, and he kept the entire field spellbound with what would become the cornerstone of his career: his serve. He was called Pistol Pete. He hit 13 aces during the final match, the last of which was his 100th for the tournament, giving him a 5-2 lead in the third set. With the win, Pete Sampras had instantly become the game's new fresh face. Ivan Lendl said afterwards, "I think what is so cute about him is he's just another kid. I don't think he's fully realized what's happened to him." As a young player, Pete Sampras idolized Rod Laver. I have talked about Rod Laver in a video on this channel. As much for Rod Laver's ability to win on all surfaces as how he comported himself in victory. The two shared a common playing style: serve and volley, attack, controlled tennis. But Pete Sampras was bigger and stronger than Rod Laver and could pound his forehand and backhand harder than the Aussie legend could. What they shared was class. Pete Sampras was the consummate tennis champion, both in triumph and in defeat. Starting in 1993 and until 2000, there were considerably more triumphs than defeats. Pete Sampras captured 12 of his major titles in this 8-year span, playing in arguably the most competitive decade in men's tennis history. The competition was fierce and it was stacked. Pete Sampras won his first Wimbledon Gentlemen's Singles Championships in 1993, leading to a run of 7 victories in 8 years, 3 straight from 1993 to 1995 and 4 consecutively from 1997 to 2000. At the All England club, Pete Sampras compiled a career record of 63 wins and 7 defeats, 90% winning record. He won 3 of 5 US Opens from 1993 to 1996, and his 2 Australian Championships were captured in 1994 and 1997. He won 2 major singles titles in the same year 4 times: 1993, 1994, 1995 and 1997. Pete Sampras' assault on the Wimbledon record books began in 1993. He won the 1993 and 1994 Wimbledon titles as the number 1 seed, defeating Jim Courier 7-6, 7-6, 3-6, 6-3 and Goran Ivanisevic 7-6, 7-6, 6-love respectively. I have talked about Jim Courier in a video on this channel. His 1995 title was earned as the number 2 seed in a 6-7, 6-2, 6-4, 6-2 triumph over number 3 seed Boris Becker. I have talked about Boris Becker in a video on this channel. His 4 straight championships starting in 1997, he lost in the 1996 quarterfinals, were all achieved as the number 1 seed. He ousted Frenchman Cedric Pioline in 1997, 6-4, 6-2, 6-4, Goran Ivanisevic again in 1998, 6-7, 7-6, 6-4, 3-6, 6-2, Andre Agassi in 1999, 6-3, 6-4, 7-5 and Australian Patrick Rafter in 2000, 6-7, 7-6, 6-4, 6-2. Pete Sampras said, "Whatever happened in my career or my tennis or mentally, it happened for a reason. In a lot of ways, I felt like I was born to win Wimbledon." Pete Sampras advanced to the 1992 final at the US Open against Stefan Edberg, falling 3-6, 6-4, 7-6, 6-2. I have talked about Stefan Edberg in a video on this channel. In 1993, he defeated Pioline in the finals, a routine 6-4, 6-4, 6-3 Pete Sampras victory. In a well-played and entertaining 1995 final against Andre Agassi, Pete Sampras prevailed 6-4, 6-3, 4-6, 7-5. He successfully defended his title in 1996, sweeping past American Michael Chang 6-1, 6-4, 7-6. When Pete Sampras defeated Andre Agassi in the 2002 final, it put the finishing touches on a tremendous run at Flushing Meadows, where he compiled a 71 wins to 9 defeats record, which at that time was the best in tennis history. It was certainly a far cry from his 1988 debut when, as a wild card entrant, he lost to Peruvian Jaime Zaga in 5 sets after winning the first 2 sets in tiebreakers 6-7, 6-7, 6-4, 7-5, 6-2. Pete Sampras added to his legacy with a pair of Australian titles. The 1994 championship earned over Todd Martin 7-6, 6-4, 6-4. Spain's Carlos Moya was swept in straight sets in 1997 6-2, 6-3, 6-3. The only major title that evaded Pete Sampras was at the French Open, where the slow clay at Roland Garros was a stickler for Pete Sampras, whose game was tailor-made for fast, hard courts. His best finish in Paris was the semi-finals in 1996, where as the number 1 seed, he fell to eventual champion Yevgeny Kafelnikov 6-7, love 6, 2-6. The sum of Pete Sampras' major exploits were legendary and among the greatest achievements in the history of tennis. From 1992 to 2002, he had 11 years of reaching at least one major final. From 1990 to 2002, he appeared in 8 US Open finals. He won 5 or more titles at 2 different majors. He was named the ATP Player of the Year 6 consecutive times from 1993 to 1998. Those same years, Pete Sampras was also crowned International Tennis Federation World Champion. He played 8 times for the US Davis Cup team, winning the 1992 championship over Switzerland 3-1 and the 1995 title over Russia 3-2. Now, some may argue that Pete Sampras did not have a game that suited all surfaces, which in the modern era is regarded as a weakness, but when Pete Sampras was at his peak, no discernible weakness could be found in his game. His serve and volley skills were enough to propel him past most players, but as his game matured, Pete Sampras learned to rely less on his serve and became exceedingly equipped to play an all-court game. His forehand could be lethal, his return of serve improved, his backhand, both topspin and slice, became a dependable and powerful stroke, and his willingness to strategically orchestrate points made him a rock-solid opponent to defeat. That is the sign of a champion. He has almost all the shots and he's worked hard. He's capable of doing anything. John McEnroe said this about Pete Sampras. On its 14th July 1997 cover, Sports Illustrated featured a leaping Sampras ready to unleash a thumping overhead with the headline, "An American Classic." In 2005, Tennis Magazine named him the greatest player from 1995 to 2005 in the magazine's 40 Greatest Players of the Tennis Era issue. Pete Sampras said, "After I went through 2 years of not winning an event, what kept me going was winning one more major. Once I won that last US Open in 2002, I spent the next 6 months trying to figure out what was next. Slowly my passion for the sport just vanished. I had nothing left to prove." What Pete Sampras left behind was an indelible mark as a champion who played his best when the stakes were the greatest. A gracious, workmanlike champion who has his name threaded permanently throughout the history books. Pete Sampras earned more than 43 million American dollars in prize money, and he also earned his place in the hearts of tennis fans all over the world.